great pleasure to meet the MCI management, to meet all of the media fellows, to meet with you here. I must say that in the short time that I have been here, that I'm really excited by what you are doing, the innovation, and the life that I've seen here. I'm going to ask for your indulgence because I want to put on record, take this opportunity today, to put on record a number of thoughts about media freedom globally, in the European Union, and of course here in Uganda. And I'm conscious that this is being recorded, so I plan to use this, put it on our website, and to give it a traction outside of this venue and indeed outside of this country. Because of that, I'm going to be a little formal in my opening remarks, and I hope you'll bear with me for that. But then when I have done that, I'm quite happy to sit down and in a more relaxed way to answer your questions and address whatever issues you want me to talk about. So let me begin by saying that human rights are in the DNA of the European Union, and therefore human rights are central to the European Union's relations with countries all over the world. And it's very much at the heart of my job as the European Union Special Representative for Human Rights to enhance the presence, effectiveness, and visibility of the EU human rights policies in all of the European Union's foreign policy and external actions. This is not my first time in Uganda. I was here about 10 years ago in a different capacity as the Foreign Minister of my own country, Ireland. But it is great to be back here, to meet with young people who are the future of this great country, and especially young journalists who have the chance to shape the news, public opinion, and the future development of this country for years to come. As I'm sure you all know, journalists are an essential part of a free and vibrant media and a key pillar of every democratic society. When well done, and I repeat that, when well done, journalism allows citizens to access reliable and fact-checked information. This information access, in turn, enables citizens to engage in public debate and discourse from an informed perspective, which is vital for elections, for the active civic engagement, and for the generation of ideas and of innovation, which improves how all our countries are run. In this regard, I was delighted to learn that in 2019, following European Union support to the 2019 MCI Fellowship Programme, 6 of the fellows from that programme have since moved on to start Debunk, which I've just seen, a fact-checking project that is countering misinformation and disinformation in Uganda and Africa through video. This is a great achievement, and I want to say well done to MCI and to the fellows concerned. Journalism also allows for hidden stories to be shared and for the voices of the marginalized and vulnerable to be amplified in the public domain. Recent examples include stories which have revealed the plight of refugees across the world, which have exposed institutionalized child sex abuse in religious institutions, and revealed the scale and detail of tax evasion by some of the world's richest people. Of course, journalism is also a powerful tool for holding our leaders to account by shining a spotlight on individual politicians and on government institutions. This is a crucial ingredient for any democratic society. But of course, we all know that in doing so, journalists often open themselves up to serious risks, and I will address some of these issues a bit later in my remarks. And finally, journalism is a vital tool for access to reliable information in times of conflict. And let me take this opportunity to acknowledge the incredible and the courageous work being done right now by journalists covering the conflict in Ukraine, and indeed in other conflicts. And I was deeply saddened just yesterday by the death of the Ukrainian photographer Maxim Len, and our thoughts are with his family and fellow journalists who are fearlessly documenting the war in Ukraine. We are well aware of the enhanced risk faced by journalists reporting on war and conflict areas. International humanitarian law clearly requires that journalists are protected during armed conflicts in the same way as any civilian. And let me mention a few things that the EU is doing to fight disinformation and to address threats and attacks against independent journalists. EU versus Disinfo is our flagship project, debunking Russian disinformation campaigns targeting our member states and our neighboring countries. The EU versus Disinfo database, the only searchable open source repository of its kind, currently comprises over 12,000 samples of pro-Kremlin disinformation. With the invasion of Ukraine, disinformation campaigns in Europe will likely reach a new level. In 2018, the EU adopted an action plan to fight disinformation, which consolidates the EU's efforts to tackle disinformation. To protect journalists, the EU has launched the program Protect Defenders that can support individual journalists and other human rights defenders that are endangered. And we are planning to reinforce this program with specific attention to journalists, and we are preparing other initiatives, such as a sort of Erasmus scheme for young journalists based in difficult countries to learn and to work for a period in Europe. As soon as these new programs will be operational, information will be circulated by the European Union delegation. In addition, the European Union funds on a daily basis around the world emergency grants of up to €10,000 for human rights defenders and journalists at risk that can finance, among other things, urgent relocation, legal support, digital devices, or other protection measures. The state of media freedom in the world today is not an encouraging picture. Despite the explosion in the amount of information publicly available due to online connectivity, it seems that there has never been as many or as complex challenges facing journalists as there are today. According to Reporters Without Borders, in 2021, journalism was totally blocked or seriously impeded in 73 countries and constrained in 59 others. This means that in only about 1/3 of the countries of the world is where journalists can carry out their profession free from interference or attack. There is also a very worrying gender dimension to these trends. A 2021 report from the United Nations described what it called, and I'm quoting, an epidemic of online violence against female journalists worldwide, which is undermining their reporting, spilling over into real-life attacks and harassment, and putting their health and professional prospects in jeopardy. At times, we know that these attacks result in the most serious consequences for journalists. The Committee for the Protection of Journalists highlights that over 1,500 journalists and media workers have been killed since 1992 as a direct result of their reporting. And according to Reporters Sans Frontières, already 14 journalists have been killed since the beginning of this year. Behind each one of those figures is a person, a family, and a career cut short. Of course, these killings also have a chilling effect on others who might think of reporting on similar stories and many journalists are now pushed towards self-censorship. As the world's media ecosystem evolves into a digital space, the internet is also becoming a more restricted space for free speech. According to Freedom House's report, Freedom on the Net report in 2021, they found that global internet freedom declined for the 11th consecutive year. Many states are imposing either full-scale internet shutdowns or either network disruptions or targeted shutdowns of certain applications. Technology, including spyware, is also increasingly being used to carry out surveillance against journalists and civil society organizations. And worryingly, Freedom House cites Uganda as one of the countries with the biggest decline in online freedoms last year. Not only is the internet being increasingly restricted by governments and regulators, it has also become the breeding ground for a spread of harmful disinformation and misinformation, often scapegoating minorities. Whether this is state-driven, or pushed by non-state actors, or amplified by algorithms, false information online and the creation of information silos are some of the biggest threats to modern-day democracy. Much like the internet, modern-day threats to freedom of expression and media freedom exist in every corner of the world. No country or society is immune from these problems, presenting us with a truly global challenge. Media freedom is also under threat in the European Union. According to the European Federation of Journalists and others, in 2021, 1,063 individuals or media entities were subject to press freedom violations, and 3 journalists were murdered in the European Union. European countries have also experienced waves of targeted disinformation in recent years. Often state-driven, disinformation has twisted facts and undermined important national discussions, including elections. These threats to media freedom call for bold and innovative responses from governments, from civil society, and the media sector. At the European level, in January of this year, the European Commission launched a public consultation on a new media freedom law, the first of its kind at the European level. This new law, which is planned to be adopted later this year, seeks to advance the media sector with a view to safeguarding media freedom and pluralism. It is also a key component in the EU's efforts to promote democratic participation and to fight disinformation. Through the European Union's Democracy Action Plan, we are also supporting projects to improve the safety of journalists, protect journalists and civil society against abusive litigation, and to support journalistic partnerships and standards. So yes, the EU is taking those threats seriously at home, but we are also taking these threats seriously abroad through our international partnerships, including with Uganda. So let me turn to the situation facing the media and specifically journalists here in Uganda. Most of you will know, the European Union has been engaged in issues relating to media freedom here for many years. Through our delegation here in Kampala and the 10 EU member states who have missions present here, we keep a very close eye on the situation. What we observe, and I know that this will be well known to you, is not very encouraging. The Human Rights Network for Journalists Uganda Press Freedom Index for 2020 recorded 174 individual press freedom violations, of which well over a third were assaults against journalists. There were also a high number of cases where journalists were arrested. Recently, we have seen some terrible attacks, including a photojournalist being shot in the face at point-blank range with a rubber bullet, a female journalist being knocked to the ground and beaten on the head and body by a male security operative, and several violent arrests of journalists during the electoral campaign. And there are many other examples besides these. In most of these cases, despite months and sometimes years of court battles, Nobody is arrested or prosecuted or found guilty for these crimes. The examples that I give are real events showing the kind of shocking and dangerous treatment that some journalists have faced in recent months. In late 2020 and early 2021, as the election campaign was underway, we also witnessed the closure of radio stations and the prevention of access to radio stations for opposition candidates. We saw the deportation of foreign journalists and last-minute changes of rules regarding how journalists were to be accredited to cover the election. The experience of journalists on the campaign trail was particularly troubling. In terms of alleged perpetrators, the Human Rights Networks for Journalists Uganda report indicates that the Uganda Police Force and the Uganda People's Defence Forces were responsible for over 2/3 of all violations. There is no justification for such appalling treatment of women and men who are simply trying to do their job. While he is not strictly a journalist, let me also take a moment to mention the case of writer Kakwenza Rugarabishaya, who, as you know, was recently detained and brutally tortured as a result of comments that he made online. While I don't want to get into the merits or demerits of what he said, let me just say this. Nobody, regardless of the words they use against another person, should ever be subjected to the kind of torture that Kakwenza suffered. This treatment is inhuman, and it has no place whatever in a modern society. Of course, we as European Union, we recognize Uganda's sovereignty and its inherent right to chart its own path to democracy and development. However, we cannot stand by and be silent when another human being is treated in such a way. And rest assured that we've already spoken out strongly on this case, and I will be raising his case with the authorities during my visit this week. More broadly, the European Union has taken and continues to take a strong stance in condemning attacks on journalists. We have called for an end to these attacks in numerous public statements, pressed government to take action against perpetrators during our diplomatic engagements, and organised public discussions bringing together government security services and media. The European Union also funds a range of projects in the area of media freedom in Uganda. Through our funding to the Uganda Radio Network, the European Union is supporting journalists who undertake conflict-sensitive journalism in the pre- and post-election periods. Our work with the African Centre for Media Excellence sees capacity-building support to journalists all across the country to undertake investigative journalism projects. We are also pleased to have supported the Uganda Press Photo Award for many years, and finally, through the Democratic Governance Facility, the EU has supported a wide range of partners, including the Uganda Media Women's Association, Human Rights Network for Journalists Uganda, Wizards Media, and others. For the European Union, we will continue to prioritise media freedom and freedom of expression as part of our political dialogue with the government of Uganda and as part of our project funding in the coming years. We are particularly pleased to be here today and to see the great work being done with you, the next generation of journalists in Uganda, and I look forward to finding opportunities to work together in the future. I know that the responsibility on your shoulders is a big one, and of course, you will face challenges and problems as your careers progress. However, I hope that you can be assured that the European Union is an ally when it comes to advocating for the freedom of the media and the need to protect journalists in this country and in other countries. We will continue to raise difficult issues. We will continue to raise the need for broad policy reforms, and we will continue to engage on individual cases when needed. I want to wish every one of you the best of success for the conclusion of your fellowships here at MCI, and for your future careers and for your personal lives in the future. And I want to repeat again my thanks to MCI for their kind invitation to be here today and the opportunity to express these remarks to you. Thank you very much indeed.